Hey everyone, tonight we're trading our alarm clocks for the rising sun, our grocery runs for sharpened spears, and our thermostats for the flickering warmth of a communal fire. Welcome to the original daily grind. Forget hitting snooze and scrolling through emails. In the Paleolithic world, your day began the moment the sun did, and your first meeting wasn't a coffee chat. It was a council to decide who hunts, who gathers, and how the entire group would survive until sunset. Imagine being judged not by your performance review, but by the freshness of the tracks you're following. There's no safety net, no insurance, and definitely no calling in sick. The questions? Not riddles, but life or death calculations. Are those clouds a storm or just passing through? Is that rustle in the bushes a rabbit or a saber-toothed cat? The competition? Not your co-workers, but hunger, predators, and the coming winter. The consequences? Let's just say there's no better luck next time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, let your mind wander, and allow the gentle rhythm of my voice to lull you towards sleep. Maybe settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The dawn awakening. The initial beams of daylight filter into the cave's opening, illuminating the limestone walls with a warm, golden hue. A child is the first to stir, not prompted by an alarm or a parent's call, but by an internal clock perfectly attuned to the rhythms of nature. This advanced human settlement, located in what is now southern France 30,000 years ago, stands in stark contrast to the grunting, club-wielding caveman stereotype seared into our minds by Hollywood. The inhabitants are poised to start a day far more intricate than many of us comprehend. It's time to discard preconceived notions about cavemen. The term itself is inaccurate, with a population density of only about 0. For individuals per square kilometer, the majority of Paleolithic people were not cave dwellers. They were nomadic, migrating with animal herds and seasonal vegetation across expansive landscapes. Caves served them as occasional havens during severe weather or as consecrated sites for ceremonies. The popular conception of primitive beings perpetually huddled in damp caverns is pure fantasy. As daylight grows, bodies move with the smooth efficiency of those who have never experienced the abrupt jolt of an alarm. Their circadian rhythms, untouched by artificial illumination, operate in complete sync with the sun. Contemporary sleep scientists who study communities lacking electricity have found something extraordinary. Humans naturally awaken gently as light increases, bypassing the grogginess known as sleep inertia. Our Stone Age forebears had what we now spend fortunes on to replicate with smart technology and sunrise simulating lamps. The sounds of the morning are not the alerts of smartphones or the drone of traffic, but an orchestral swell of life awakening. Birds herald the new day, the wind whispers through the trees, and the collective soft breathing of 25 individuals sharing a space creates a cadence as comforting as a heartbeat. Extended families slept in close proximity, with children nestled among adults, providing a sense of warmth and security that isolated modern bedrooms cannot offer. This is the original co-sleeping arrangement, which child development specialists now affirm is vital for infant well-being and emotional stability. As people wake and stretch, there is no impulse to check notifications or browse social media. Instead, an immediate, intuitive awareness of the community's status takes precedence. Were there predators nearby during the night? How is the elderly woman's cough? Is the expectant mother showing signs of labor? This profound social attunement is not a primitive trait. It's a highly developed form of communal care that contemporary medicine is just now re-exploring through ideas like the social determinants of health. Every initial movement is deliberate, carrying intent. Unlike our groggy shuffle towards the coffee machine, each action has been polished over countless generations. Children learn by observation, internalizing a morning routine that has guaranteed human continuation for hundreds of thousands of years. This is the start of every Paleolithic day, not with disorder and haste, but with the honed efficiency of a people who have perfected living in tune with their world. The fire keeper's first task. Before thoughts turn to breakfast, before water is collected, before hunting strategies are formed, one duty supersedes all others: tending to the fire. In the pre-dawn gloom, the designated firekeeper, often an elder with a lifetime of expertise, cautiously tends to the hearth. While archaeologists have long recognized the challenges in identifying ancient heat-treated materials and confirming human involvement, one fact remains clear: maintaining a fire was arguably the most vital daily responsibility. It provided more than just warmth, which was itself essential in the Ice Age climate. Fire was a multifaceted tool, technology, defense, a social nexus, and a food preparation device all in one. The firekeeper kneels, gently breathing life into embers that were meticulously banked the previous evening. This was humanity's first round-the-clock operation, a continuous flame potentially passed down through generations. The method is exact. Too much airflow, and the delicate embers disperse. Too little, and they are extinguished. This equilibrium is a skill honed through years of observation, an intuitive grasp of aerodynamics that would impress a modern engineer. The first fuel is small, dry twigs, kindling gathered the day before and kept in a moisture-free place. This is no haphazard process. It's a carefully selected assortment of materials, each chosen for its unique combustion qualities. Modern-day campers fumbling with matches would be astounded by this proficiency. Within moments, flames begin to ascend, their light casting animated shadows upon the cave walls. The firekeeper then adds larger logs, arranging them in a structure that promotes airflow while conserving fuel. It is a blend of architecture and chemistry, a body of knowledge transmitted through countless generations without a single written word. But what is often overlooked is that this fire was not for a single family. Fossil evidence indicates that ancient foragers were less prone to starvation or malnutrition and were generally healthier and taller than the agriculturalists who followed. This well-being was no accident. It stemmed from communities that shared everything, including fire. Neighboring groups might visit to borrow embers, forging a web of reciprocal aid that makes modern social networks seem elementary. The morning fire fulfills several roles at once. It repels predators that might be active in the twilight hours. Its rising smoke is a beacon to other human groups, a declaration. We are present. We are living. We are human. It is the epicenter for breakfast preparation, tool crafting, and social interaction, the very core of Paleolithic technology. As the fire strengthens, the keeper's role transitions from ignition to management. Different sections of the hearth are designated for specific functions: a hot zone for cooking, a cooler area for warmth, and a bed of coals for later toolmaking. This is not mere fire tending. It is skilled technical labor demanding a deep understanding of heat dynamics, fuel efficiency, and precise timing. The firekeeper is an engineer, chemist, and community facilitator, expertly managing humanity's most pivotal technology. The Morning Council. As the fire crackles and warmth permeates the settlement, a remarkable event unfolds. With no formal summons, calendar invites, or written agendas, the adults instinctively convene around the hearth. This is the Morning Council, a daily ritual that predates any organized government by millennia, yet functions with an efficiency that would be the envy of today's management experts. The group's leader, an elderly woman, holds her authority not through inherited status or political gamesmanship, but through a lifetime of sound judgment, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and an almost supernatural ability to forecast the weather. Archaeological findings from art and burial customs show that numerous women enjoyed high standing in their communities, and it's probable that both genders contributed to decision-making. This is not the patriarchal society of popular fiction. It's a pragmatic arrangement where competence supersedes gender. The conversation starts with pressing issues. A young hunter notes tracks by the water source, likely deer, but he observes they seem cautious, possibly sensing danger. An experienced gatherer reports that the hazelnut groves 2 valleys away should be prime for harvesting in a few days. Another person remarks on a shift in wind patterns, foretelling a change in weather. This is not casual conversation. It's a session of intelligence gathering on par with any modern command center. The decision-making process is fascinating. There is no formal voting or parliamentary procedure. Yet, every individual who wishes to contribute is given the floor. Even adolescents can share their observations, although they are expected to listen more than they speak. The method is what anthropologists term consensus building. Ideas are debated, adjusted, and polished until a collective agreement is reached. It's democracy in its most unadulterated form, thousands of years before Athens laid claim to its invention. The day's strategy materializes organically. A hunting team will investigate the deer tracks, but they will take a roundabout path to scout 3 other potential locations. A gathering party will head to a previously visited nut grove to complete the harvest before the hazelnuts are overripe. 2 artisans will remain at the settlement to work on winter garments, a task made urgent by the predicted weather shift. An elder will accompany the children to the stream, turning water collection into a lesson on identifying edible flora. Notice what is absent. No one is tasked with pointless busywork. No one dedicates 8 hours to a single monotonous chore. Every action has a distinct purpose and provides an immediate advantage to the community. The modern idea of a job, as described by anthropologist David Graeber, would be utterly foreign to them. Each task directly supports the group's survival and prosperity. The morning council also fulfills a social role largely absent in contemporary life. It's a daily reaffirmation of community ties, a forum to resolve disputes before they escalate, and a chance to transmit knowledge across generations. An elder advises a new mother on infant care. A seasoned hunter shows a new tracking method. A child excitedly points out a newly found berry patch. All of this occurs naturally within the council's framework, a blend of education, governance, and social cohesion that establishes the rhythm for the entire day. Water and the daily journey. With the day's agenda set, one of the first groups to set out undertakes a task so basic we scarcely consider it. Collecting water. We turn a tap and water appears. But for our Paleolithic forebears, water necessitated a daily expedition that defined settlement locations, social dynamics, and the very odds of survival. This morning, like countless others before, a small party gets ready for the water run. The carriers are not selected at random. They are typically adolescents and young adults, strong enough for heavy loads and spry enough for a swift journey. They take containers fashioned from animal bladders or tightly woven baskets sealed with pine pitch, humanity's original water bottles. These were engineered through extensive trial and error to be lightweight when empty and durable when full. Some communities near rivers utilized hollowed gourds. Others made containers from birch bark. The specific technology differed, but the fundamental need was universal. The trip to the water source is more than just filling vessels. It's a meticulously planned safety mission. The water source is a magnet for all life in the vicinity, from harmless deer to lethal predators. The group proceeds with practiced vigilance, one person constantly scanning for danger while the others collect water. They know from experience that dawn and dusk are the most perilous times, when predators are most active. Mid-morning provides the ideal combination of good visibility and relative safety. En route, they are not merely walking, they are gathering vital intelligence. Fresh tracks in the mud reveal which animals drank there recently, whether predators are lurking, or if other human bands have passed by. A snapped branch might signal a bear's presence. Disturbed ground could indicate a herd of aurochs. This information is as precious as the water itself and will be relayed back at the camp. The water source itself is a repository of accumulated wisdom. They know which pools are the cleanest, which streams flow all year, and where the water is sweetest. Some groups learned to use natural filtration by collecting water where it seeped through sand. Others knew to avoid certain sources during seasonal algae blooms. This knowledge wasn't recorded in any text. It was earned over generations of careful observation, sometimes at the cost of severe illness when errors were made. But archaeological findings reveal a surprising fact. Large-seeded legumes were a dietary staple long before the Neolithic Revolution, as shown by archaeobotanical evidence from the Mousterian layers of Kabra Cave in Israel. These water-gathering treks served a dual purpose. The carriers would collect edible plants along their path, optimizing their efforts in a way that would impress modern productivity gurus. A single trip fulfilled multiple objectives: securing water, gathering food, collecting intelligence, and surveying their territory. The return journey is the most arduous. A full water container can weigh 30 pounds or more. The carriers employ specialized techniques, such as using tumplines across their foreheads to better distribute the load. They walk with a specific gait to minimize spillage and choose routes that bypass difficult terrain. This is ergonomics honed over millennia of practice. Modern hikers with their advanced hydration packs are applying principles perfected by these ancient peoples. Distribute weight, keep a steady pace, and safeguard the water supply, because without it, nothing else is possible. The breakfast hunt. While the water carriers are on their mission, another party prepares for what could be termed the breakfast hunt, although it has no parallel to a quick run to the supermarket. The hunters who noted the deer tracks during the morning council now assemble their gear with the intense focus of surgeons readying for a delicate procedure. This is not the epic mammoth hunt of popular lore. This is about procuring fresh protein for the morning's meal. The hunting party is compact, usually 3 to 5 individuals who have collaborated for years. They are intimately familiar with each other's movements, can communicate with the slightest hand gesture, and have complete trust in one another. Their armaments are feats of engineering. Wooden spears with fire-hardened tips, perfectly weighted for throwing. Some wield spear throwers or atlatls, which dramatically increase the force of their throw. While the earliest European hand axes belonged to the Abbevillean industry from the Somme River Valley, toolmaking by this era had become a highly refined craft. However, the key to Paleolithic hunting success was intelligence more than brute force. These hunters are behavioral experts who have dedicated their lives to understanding their quarry. They know that deer follow predictable feeding schedules, favor certain plants at specific times, and use established routes between feeding grounds and water sources. This generational knowledge gives them an edge that no modern technology could provide. The hunters traverse the landscape, deciphering signs that are invisible to the modern eye. A bent blade of grass reveals how recently an animal passed. The height of browsed foliage indicates the deer's size. Fresh droppings provide insights into its diet and health. They are not simply following tracks. They are anticipating the animal's next move, thinking several steps ahead like chess grandmasters. This predictive hunting demands cognitive skills that neuroscientists now identify as foundational to human intellect. When they finally locate their prey, a small herd of deer grazing in a meadow, the real artistry begins. They must approach from downwind, move without a sound across terrain that seems designed to be noisy, and coordinate their assault without speaking. One hunter might execute a wide flanking maneuver to steer the deer towards concealed companions. Others take up positions along probable escape paths. It is a sophisticated tactical operation, an ambush that military strategists would readily recognize. The critical moment arrives swiftly. A thrown spear, launched with expert precision, can travel 30 yards in less than 2 seconds. There is no margin for error. A miss means the deer vanish, and the hunters go back empty-handed. But a successful strike provides immediate protein for the group. The animal is promptly field-dressed, and every single part is put to use. Nothing is squandered because waste is synonymous with hunger. The efficiency of this system is remarkable. As skeletal evidence confirms, ancient foragers were less susceptible to starvation and were typically taller and more robust than the agricultural peoples who succeeded them. This health was not incidental to their hunting methods. It was a direct result of them. The blend of detailed ecological knowledge, advanced hunting tactics, and the complete utilization of resources formed a sustainable system that enabled human populations to flourish for hundreds of thousands of years. The breakfast hunt is not merely about obtaining food. It is the culmination of the intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability that allowed our species to prosper worldwide. The Toolmaker's workshop. While hunters track game and gatherers forage for plants, one group stays behind, dedicated to what is likely humanity's most ancient manufacturing activity. The Toolmaker sits cross-legged by the fire, encircled by meticulously chosen stones, studying each one as a jeweler would a diamond. This is not primitive rock smashing. It's precision engineering that would take a modern person years to learn. Stone knapping is a highly demanding skill that requires years of dedicated practice to perfect. In one study, subjects who practiced for an average of 167 hours over 22 months achieved competence in producing simple flakes but showed little progress in making more complex hand axes. Consider that 167 hours just to become proficient at the basics. Our Paleolithic toolmaker has been practicing since they were a child, accumulating thousands of hours of experience. The morning's work starts with selecting the right materials. Not just any stone is suitable. The toolmaker requires cryptocrystalline rocks like flint, chert, or obsidian, which break in a predictable manner. When force is applied to these fine-grained stones, the fracture radiates from the point of impact in a curved, shell-like pattern known as a conchoidal fracture. This understanding, passed down through generations, is humanity's first foray into material science. Observe the toolmaker's hands. The left hand holds the core stone at a specific angle. The right wields a hammerstone, neither too heavy nor too light, selected for this very task. The strike originates not from the arm but from a controlled flick of the wrist, channeling force to the exact desired point. Modern brain imaging studies reveal that making technical judgments in lower Paleolithic toolmaking activates the dorsal prefrontal cortex, the same brain area we use for complex planning and decision-making. Each strike is a calculated move. A mistake in knapping can be fatal to the tool being made. One misplaced blow can destroy hours of work. The toolmaker must continuously assess. Is the angle correct? How much force is needed? Where precisely should the impact be? It's a game of three-dimensional chess where each move irrevocably changes the board. The workshop is not just for production. It's a hub of innovation. The Aurignacian culture, for instance, appears to have been the first to heavily rely on blades. The use of blades drastically increases the efficiency of a stone core compared to the older Levallois flake technique. This was a technological leap as significant as the invention of the microchip. More cutting edge from the same quantity of raw material meant less time spent sourcing stone and more time for other vital tasks. The Paleolithic version of industrial efficiency. The social dimension is just as critical. Young apprentices observe every action, learning through imitation. There are no online tutorials or instruction manuals, only the patient transfer of knowledge from master to student. The toolmaker might pause to allow an apprentice to try, guiding their hands and correcting their form. This moment of teaching is profound. The intentional transmission of complex technical skill, a uniquely human characteristic that enables culture to build and advance across generations. The gathering expedition. As the toolmaker refines their craft, another group readies for what many archaeologists consider the most vital daily task: gathering. Led by seasoned women who possess an encyclopedic knowledge of every edible plant within a day's journey, this expedition will secure the bulk of the day's calories. Dispel the man-the-hunter myth. Mounting archaeological evidence indicates that plant foods, not meat, were the bedrock of the Paleolithic diet. The gathering party comprises women of all ages, from grandmothers with decades of experience to young girls just learning to distinguish edible species. Several men, often younger ones yet to establish themselves as top hunters, also join. They carry specialized equipment: digging sticks hardened by fire, woven baskets made waterproof with pine resin, and sharp stone flakes for slicing through fibrous stems. This is a toolkit perfected over millennia for peak efficiency. Their target today is a valley a 2-hour walk away, where experience suggests certain tubers will be ready for harvest. But this is not a simple shopping trip. The gatherers navigate the terrain like field ecologists, constantly observing, testing, and committing information to memory. When a young woman finds unfamiliar berries, she doesn't risk poisoning the group. Instead, she conducts a methodical test passed down through generations. First, she crushes a berry and rubs it on a sensitive patch of skin, like the inside of her wrist, waiting to see if a rash appears. If not, she will touch it to her lips, then the tip of her tongue, with long pauses between each step to check for adverse reactions. This cautious methodology enabled humans to safely expand into new environments and utilize unknown resources. The knowledge required is immense. Each gatherer must be able to identify dozens of plants at various stages of growth, know which parts are edible and when, understand methods to neutralize natural toxins, and remember the locations and ripening schedules of resources scattered across a vast territory. Modern ethnobotanists studying indigenous groups are consistently impressed by the depth of this knowledge, which often surpasses that found in scientific manuals. The gathering process itself is far from aimless. The group follows a calculated route designed to maximize their yield, visiting known resource patches in an order that factors in ripening times, travel distance, and carrying capacity. They are, in essence, solving a complex optimization challenge, what mathematicians call the traveling salesman problem, using mental maps and collective memory instead of computer algorithms. Social bonds are forged during these expeditions. Knowledge is passed from one generation to the next through stories and songs that embed crucial information about plants, locations, and seasons. Older women share wisdom and news while their hands work almost automatically, their movements honed by decades of practice. Young mothers carry infants in slings, where the babies absorb the sights, sounds, and smells that will one day inform their own gathering journeys. It is a highly efficient activity that combines education, exercise, socializing, and food procurement into a single cohesive whole. Children at play but really learning. Back at the settlement, a group of children seems to be merely playing. But a closer look reveals something more profound. That game with miniature spears? It's honing the hand-eye coordination essential for hunting. The detailed make-believe game centered on family roles? It's a rehearsal of critical social structures. The Paleolithic playground was humanity's first school, and it was remarkably effective. A 6-year-old boy strikes pebbles together with intense focus, copying the toolmaker's actions. His creations are comically crude by adult standards, yet each impact teaches him the relationship between angle, force, and fracture. By the time he is an adolescent, he will be able to produce functional tools. As an adult, he might even develop new techniques. This journey from play to proficiency unfolds without any formal lessons, propelled by an intrinsic curiosity that modern educators work hard to foster. The girls are not just playing with dolls, though they do that too, using figures crafted from clay or tied grass. They are also practicing the art of weaving with grass stalks, mastering the basic patterns that will one day form waterproof baskets. They compete to identify edible plants around the camp, turning botany into a form of entertainment. Mixed-age playgroups establish natural mentorships. Older children earn social standing by teaching younger ones, which in turn reinforces their own knowledge. A 12-year-old girl patiently shows a younger child how to extract fibers from a plant stem, demonstrating the clarity of a skilled teacher. She learned this very skill from an older child years before, extending a chain of knowledge transfer that stretches back countless generations. Physical activity is a dominant feature of their day. Children race each other through natural obstacle courses of rocks and fallen logs, developing the agility required to navigate difficult terrain while chasing prey or escaping predators. They climb trees with simian grace, throw stones at targets with improving precision, and engage in wrestling matches that build strength while teaching social boundaries. It is a holistic curriculum that produces adults with extraordinary physical capabilities. Perhaps most critically, children have ample, unstructured time to discover, innovate, and imagine. The dog, humanity's first domesticated animal, descended from wild wolves long before the agricultural revolution. A child playing with wolf pups on the edge of the camp could be taking part in one of humanity's most significant relationships, all without the constraints of formal schooling. Paleolithic children learned at their own rhythm, pursuing their own interests and developing the varied skills their community needed. It is an educational model that modern alternative schools are only now beginning to embrace once more. The midday rest. As the sun climbs to its highest point and the temperature peaks, the camp adopts a rhythm that has been lost in modern, climate-controlled societies. This is the midday rest, not an act of laziness, but a wise adaptation to the environment. While we battle afternoon fatigue with caffeine, our ancestors synchronized their activities with the body's natural cycles. The hunters have returned, whether successful or not, and are sharing their stories while relaxing in the shade. Their tales are not just for amusement. They are a means of transferring information. One hunter might describe new tracks he saw near a far-off watering hole, thereby updating the group's collective mental map of game movements. Another might demonstrate how he adjusted his spear-throwing form to compensate for the wind, sharing an innovation in real time. This period of rest serves purposes beyond escaping the heat. It is a time for tool maintenance and repair. A hunter might resharpen a blunted spear tip, while a gatherer mends a tear in her basket. The toolmaker, taking a break from the intense work of napping, sorts through the morning's output, selecting the best pieces and assessing what still needs to be made. This is quality control and inventory management Paleolithic style. Social connections deepen during these tranquil hours. Interband trade may have emerged during the Middle Paleolithic as a survival strategy, allowing groups to exchange resources. A visitor from a neighboring band might choose to arrive at midday, when travel is least comfortable but the camp is most likely to be fully assembled. Information about resource availability, weather systems, and the movements of other groups is exchanged alongside material goods. The elderly, esteemed for their wisdom rather than sidelined for their diminished physical abilities, often hold court during this time. They are living archives, their memories a repository of decades of vital information about infrequent but significant events like droughts, severe winters, or unusual animal migrations. A grandmother might recall a similar weather pattern from 40 years prior and describe which plants remained edible during the subsequent dry spell. This institutional memory enables the group to prepare for rare but high-stakes events. Children either nap or engage in quiet pastimes, processing the morning's lessons through relaxed play. Adults might work on non-essential crafts, like decorating tools or creating jewelry from shells and stones, experimenting with new designs when freed from the immediate pressures of survival. It is in these unhurried moments that creativity often flourishes. The midday rest also allows for what we might term preventive healthcare. Individuals can treat minor injuries before they become serious, apply herbal poultices to cuts, and massage tired muscles. The group's shared medical knowledge is reinforced through casual discussions about effective remedies. It is peer-reviewed medicine, validated by generations of practical use. Afternoon crafts and clothing. As the shadows grow longer and the air begins to cool, the camp stirs with renewed vigor. The afternoon is the ideal time for craft work, especially the perpetual task of making and mending clothing. In the Paleolithic era, fashion was not about social status. It was about survival, and the skills involved would put modern couturiers to shame. A woman sits with a recently acquired deerskin, embarking on the intricate process of transforming it. First, she uses a stone scraper to meticulously remove all traces of fat and flesh, a task that demands hours of precise labor. Scrapers were indispensable tools for processing animal hides and other materials, playing a vital role in the daily life of early humans. A single missed patch could lead to rot, ruining the entire hide. Her movements are rhythmic, almost trance-like, as muscle memory from years of practice guides her hand. Nearby, her sister is at a more advanced stage, softening a hide that has already been cleaned. She has prepared a paste from brain tissue and water, a mixture containing natural enzymes that are highly effective at breaking down the hide's tough fibers. Modern tanners who rely on industrial chemicals would be astonished by the efficacy of this Stone Age method. She works the paste into every inch of the material, kneading and stretching it until the rigid skin becomes soft, pliable leather. The sewing area showcases what may be the most underappreciated Paleolithic technology. From the Upper Paleolithic onward, there is abundant proof that early humans used materials like bone, antler, and ivory. The long limb bones of animals could be shaped into tools such as awls, picks, and needles. A woman skillfully threads a bone needle with sinew, creating stitches so uniform they could compete with modern machine work. She is attaching a fur lining to a winter cloak, each piece cut and placed to provide maximum warmth. Children observe and assist where they can, learning through direct participation. A young boy practices making cordage from plant fibers, twisting and rolling them against his thigh to produce strong thread. His initial attempts are uneven and frail, but with patient instruction from an elder, he learns the correct tension and rhythm. By the time he is an adult, he will be able to create cords strong enough to hold a man's weight, a material essential for everything from making traps to building shelters. The range of garments produced defies our caveman stereotypes. These are not simple fur wraps, but tailored clothes with hoods, sleeves, and fasteners. Decorative touches are also present. Shells sewn into intricate patterns, ochre designs painted onto the leather, and fringes that serve both functional and aesthetic purposes. One woman is crafting what appear to be waterproof leggings from fish skin, using incredibly fine stitches to create a watertight seam. This is technical apparel that modern outdoor gear companies would recognize and admire. The afternoon craft session is also a time for creating ornaments. A young man painstakingly drills a hole through a fox tooth, using a stone drill bit and sand as an abrasive, a process that takes hours of patient effort. These ornaments are not mere trifles. They are social signals indicating skill, status, and group affiliation. They also function as trade goods, a form of portable wealth that can be exchanged with other bands for resources or favors. The Paleolithic economy was more complex than simple survival, and the afternoon was a key period for this economic output. The art of making fire. Picture a Paleolithic camp at 4:30 a.m. The fire from the previous night has burned down to faintly glowing embers. One person awakens, sees the fading glow, and understands what needs to be done. In our modern world, we would just flip a switch or strike a match. But 40,000 years ago, reigniting that fire was a matter of life and death. Fire was not merely for warmth. It was the center of their world. Recent findings at Wonderwork Cave in South Africa indicate that humans were controlling fire as far back as 1 million years ago. But the crucial point is that maintaining a fire was more difficult than starting one. Paleolithic people devised clever ways to keep flames alive for days or even weeks. The firekeeper, often an elder or an injured individual unable to hunt, would carefully add fuel to the fire throughout the night. They used slow-burning materials like dried fungus or compressed dung, creating a kind of prehistoric time-release fuel. When it was time to move camp, they would transport glowing embers inside hollowed-out bones packed with moss, nature's original portable lighter. Archaeological data from Abri Peironi in Spain reveals organized fire management from as early as 70,000 years ago. Different areas of a settlement had their own fires, one for cooking, another for warmth, and separate ones for toolmaking, where steady heat was essential. Creating fire from scratch demanded incredible skill. The hand drill method, which involves spinning a wooden stick against a baseboard, could require 30 minutes of exhausting effort. The firemaker's hands would blister and their arms would burn, but to stop meant to start all over again. Successful firemakers were revered members of their bands. Their skills were literally a lifeline for everyone. Modern survival experts often struggle to create fire even with prior knowledge, yet Paleolithic humans did it routinely in all weather conditions. They knew which types of wood produced the best friction, how humidity influenced their success, and the exact angle required to generate a spark. This was not primitive. It was masterful engineering using only what nature provided. Children's daily lives. The quiet of a Paleolithic morning is often punctuated by the sound of children's laughter echoing through the settlement. While modern parents might drop their children off at daycare, Paleolithic children were woven into the fabric of daily life, learning by doing from the moment they could walk. One of the most striking facts for modern researchers is that children under the age of 15 made up approximately half of the world's population during the Paleolithic era. Today, that figure is only about a quarter. Imagine a band of 35 people. Nearly 24 would be in their 20s or younger. This wasn't a world of adults with a few children. It was a society where the soundscape was dominated by young voices. The archaeological record tells a remarkable story. Hand stencil motifs found in caves belong to infants, children, and adolescents, underscoring this group's importance in artistic activities. In France's Rouffignac cave, tiny fingers drew patterns into the soft clay walls, some made by children as young as 2 years old who were held up by adults to reach the ceiling. This was not just babysitting. It was cultural immersion. Unlike our age-divided society, Paleolithic children were present wherever adults were. Footprints found in Namibia, though not as clear as others, are smaller and may have been left by toddlers standing in the mud while their parents and older siblings were busy. This included napping the stone tools used to butcher a hippopotamus carcass. Imagine young children watching intently as their parents crafted tools, their small footprints preserved next to a butchering site for thousands of years. By the age of 6 or 7, children were already making meaningful contributions to the band's survival. A set of footprints from Namibia was made by a small group of children walking across a drying mudflat, likely herding a flock of sheep or goats. These were not modern children with structured playdates. They were entrusted with genuine responsibilities, learning firsthand how to track animals and read their environment. This learning process is visible in the archaeological record. Archaeologists can identify the work of a novice because those learning to make stone tools tend to make similar mistakes. These fumbled attempts, striking the stone core too forcefully or at the wrong angle, show that children were not just observing. They were practicing, failing, and trying again. Today's overprotective parents might be horrified, but these children handled sharp stones and learned through trial and error. Play was not distinct from learning. It was the very mechanism of learning. While modern children might play with plastic animal figures, Paleolithic children played with real bones, practiced with child-sized tools, and explored caves that would intimidate most adults today. Their games prepared them for the realities of adult life in ways our video games cannot. The evening gatherings. As darkness descended upon the Paleolithic world, a magical transformation occurred. The scattered individuals of the band came together around the central fire, shifting from people focused on survival chores into a cohesive community. This was more than just dinner time. It was the moment when Paleolithic society truly came to life. The firelight cast dancing shadows on faces weathered by the day's labors. A successful hunter might recount the day's pursuit, using gestures and vocalizations to recreate the instant the spear hit its mark. But this was no dry report. It was a performance. Modern neuroscience demonstrates that storytelling activates numerous brain regions, fostering shared emotional experiences. Our ancestors understood this long before the invention of MRI machines. Archaeological findings from Cavemen Cave in Israel, dating back 400,000 years, show organized hearth areas with separate zones for various activities. The main fire was not just for heat. It was the prehistoric equivalent of television and social media combined. Everyone congregated here, from nursing infants to seasoned elders, forming a multi-generational space that is rare in modern society. Sharing food around the evening fire was about more than just sustenance. It was social glue. The distribution of meat followed intricate social protocols that anthropologists still see in modern hunter-gatherer groups. The hunter who made the kill often ate last, reinforcing community bonds through acts of generosity. When you compare this to modern families eating in separate shifts or alone in front of screens, you realize a profound connection has been lost. The evening was also a key time for tool maintenance. With daylight gone, people worked by the glow of the fire, their hands guided by muscle memory honed over years. Stone tool production was not a hurried task. It was methodical, almost meditative. The rhythmic tapping of stone against stone became part of the evening's auditory landscape, as familiar as a modern TV theme song. Music also filled these evenings. Bone flutes found in Germany, dating back 43,000 years, were not solo instruments. They were part of ensemble performances. Add drums made from stretched hides, rattles from gourds filled with pebbles, and voices joined in song, and you had a symphony that could last for hours. Unlike our passive consumption of entertainment, everyone took part. Even infants felt the rhythm through their mother's movements as they danced. These gatherings were the primary means of knowledge transfer between generations. With no written language, everything, from which plants were toxic to how to track a wounded animal, was passed down orally. Elders were living libraries, and the evening gathering was when their books were opened. A child listening to stories about the last great drought was not just being entertained. They were downloading essential survival software. As the fire burned down and children fell asleep against their parents, adults might continue their conversations in hushed tones, planning the next day's activities or discussing concerns about the weather. The evening gathering wasn't just social time. It was when individuals became a people and a band became a community. Without these nightly rituals, human culture as we know it might never have emerged. The morning rituals. Before the first bird call, Before the faintest glimmer of dawn appeared on the eastern horizon, someone in the Paleolithic camp was already stirring. Their internal clock, untroubled by artificial light or alarms, was attuned to subtle environmental shifts that modern humans no longer notice. The slight dip in temperature before sunrise, the changing calls of nocturnal creatures, the different crackle of the fire as moisture settled in the pre-dawn air. This early riser had a single critical task: check the fire. In our world of on-demand heat and light, it's difficult to appreciate the terror a dead fire could inspire. Starting a fire from scratch in the morning dampness was a worst-case scenario. The firekeeper would carefully expose the coals buried the previous night, blowing softly to coax them back to life and adding dried moss or fungus that had been stored specifically for this purpose. As the fire revived, its growing light would gently rouse the others. There were no jarring alarms or frantic morning routines. Paleolithic mornings unfolded with the natural pace of increasing daylight. Bodies stirred beneath for blankets, and children snuggled closer to their parents for a final moment of warmth. The sounds were soft: the gentle breathing of the group, the rustle of someone stretching, the pop of joints as elders rose. The morning soundscape also included the rhythms of work. Someone might already be cracking nuts gathered the day before. The steady scrape of a hide being prepared or the soft tap-tap-tap of stone tool maintenance were not just chores. They were the morning music of the Paleolithic. Water collection was one of the first activities. This was not as simple as turning a faucet. It involved a walk to the nearest spring, often several hundred meters away. They would carry water in cleaned animal bladders or tightly woven baskets sealed with pine pitch. The water carrier might pause to inspect fresh animal tracks, a form of multitasking that could influence the day's hunting strategy. Hygiene was practiced, though it differed from our modern routines. Teeth were cleaned with fibrous twigs, faces were washed in cold stream water, and hair was managed with bone combs and animal fat. Archaeological evidence points to surprisingly sophisticated grooming implements. Our ancestors were not the unkempt savages of popular imagination. Breakfast was a simple affair. It might consist of leftover roasted tubers from the previous evening, some dried meat, or nuts gathered days earlier. The morning meal was about providing quick energy before the day's main work commenced. As full daylight arrived, the band would gather briefly to plan their day: who would hunt, who would gather, and who would remain with the children and elders. These were not arbitrary decisions. They were survival strategies perfected over thousands of generations. The morning ritual was not just about waking up. It was about synchronizing an entire community for another day of successful existence in a demanding world. Trading and social networks. Imagine trekking for weeks across unfamiliar terrain, carrying a precious bundle wrapped in animal hide. Your goal is a known meeting place where multiple bands come together, drawn by the allure of exotic materials and essential social ties. This was not a medieval fair or an ancient bazaar. This was Paleolithic trade, and it was far more complex than most people assume. The proof is literally etched in stone. Obsidian tools discovered hundreds of miles from their volcanic origins reveal the existence of vast trading networks that spanned entire continents. At archaeological sites across Europe, researchers have unearthed Mediterranean seashells in landlocked areas, Baltic amber in southern caves, and high-quality flint that traveled distances that would daunt a modern hiker. These were not random barters between neighbors. Chemical analysis of stone tools points to organized networks that transported materials across thousands of square miles. By sourcing artifacts, identifying where a specific raw material originated through laboratory tests, scientists can trace ancient trade routes that were active for millennia. When they analyze an obsidian tool found in France and link it to a specific volcano in Italy, they are uncovering these ancient supply chains. But why would Paleolithic people travel hundreds of miles for a particular type of stone when suitable local materials were available? The answer speaks to something fundamental about human society. These exchanges were not solely about obtaining superior tools. They were about maintaining social networks that could be the difference between life and death during lean times. A band with connections to multiple groups had a form of insurance against local scarcities, a pool of potential marriage partners, and access to a wider range of knowledge. Exchange was a tool for strengthening social bonds, not just for accumulating wealth. Unlike our modern market economy, where strangers trade money for goods, Paleolithic exchange was deeply personal. When bands convened at traditional gathering spots, often located at significant geographical landmarks like river junctions or mountain passes, they were not just trading items. They were trading stories, genes, and survival strategies. These gatherings were major events. Picture dozens of bands converging in the autumn when certain resources were plentiful. While we might idly check our phones at a trade show, Paleolithic people engaged in days of feasting, dancing, and ceremony. Young people found partners, elders shared critical environmental wisdom, and children played with peers they might not see again for another year. Women likely played a central role in these networks. Ethnographic studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers show that women often cultivate and maintain the social relationships that bind different groups. Those shell necklaces found far from the coast, they might represent a young woman's journey to join a new band, bringing with her not just ornaments but also knowledge of coastal resources and technologies. The complexity of these networks challenges our assumptions about primitive peoples. They held mental maps of territories covering hundreds of miles, memorized genealogies connecting distant groups, and honored trade partnerships that could span generations. When a piece of Baltic amber made its way to the Mediterranean, it didn't travel through anonymous intermediaries. It moved along a chain of personal relationships, with each exchange reinforcing bonds that had existed since time immemorial. Spiritual life and rituals. The flickering firelight throws shadows on the cave wall, transforming natural rock contours into something more. Ancestors, perhaps, or spirits observing from another realm. A body lies prepared for its final journey, covered in red ochre that shines like blood in the unsteady light. This is not a scene from recorded history, but from 30,000 years ago, when Paleolithic humans cultivated complex spiritual beliefs that would astonish anyone who dismisses them as simple-minded. Graves are the most definitive evidence of spiritual thought, as they mark a clear separation between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The evidence starts in the Middle Paleolithic with our Neanderthal relatives. At sites like La Chapelle-aux-Saints and Shanidar, bodies were deliberately arranged, sometimes accompanied by stone tools and animal remains. This was not careless disposal. It was intentional burial, hinting at beliefs about death that went beyond simple hygiene. But the Upper Paleolithic reveals something truly extraordinary. Based on the grave goods found with the deceased, these burials are undeniable proof of spirituality. At Sungir in Russia, archaeologists found burials so elaborate they could rival those of Egyptian royalty. An adult male was adorned with thousands of ivory beads that would have required an estimated 10,000 hours to produce, more than a year of full-time labor. 2 children, buried head to head, wore garments decorated with fox teeth and mammoth ivory. Red ochre is a recurring element in Paleolithic spiritual contexts. This iron oxide pigment was more than just decoration. It symbolized blood, life, and renewal. Bodies were painted with it, graves were dusted with it, and it stained the hands that prepared the dead for burial. Many modern cultures still use the color red in death rituals, suggesting this symbolism has deep roots in the human psyche. The earliest known burials are attributed to the Middle Paleolithic period. The deceased, accompanied by tools and animal parts, were placed in pits, and in some cases, the bodies were specially protected. Some were arranged in a fetal position, possibly symbolizing rebirth, while others were oriented toward the rising sun. These were not arbitrary acts but deliberate ritual behaviors. Cave art and spirituality were deeply connected. The fact that many paintings are found in deep, treacherous caves suggests these were sacred places. Why risk one's life to paint in chambers where no one lived? The answer may lie in the spiritual view of caves as portals between worlds, wombs of the earth where spirits resided. The art itself is a window into their spiritual thinking. Human-animal hybrids appear frequently, possibly representing shamans in trance states or mythological figures from a Paleolithic cosmology. Hand stencils, made by blowing pigment over a hand pressed to the wall, might have been a way to leave one's mark or essence in a holy place, much like modern pilgrims leave offerings at shrines. Research now indicates a much wider variety of mortuary practices than previously thought. Not everyone received an ornate burial. Some bodies were left exposed, others were treated minimally, while certain individuals, perhaps shamans, leaders, or others deemed special, were given exceptional care. This differential treatment points to complex social and spiritual hierarchies. Music, dance, and altered states of consciousness were likely key components of Paleolithic spirituality. Bone flutes and cave acoustics engineered to enhance sound point to musical ceremonies. Repetitive drumming and dancing, techniques still used globally to induce trance states, probably helped Paleolithic shamans' journey to spirit worlds. These were not primitive superstitions but sophisticated spiritual frameworks that helped humans grapple with existence, death, and their place in the universe. The foundations of human spirituality, belief in souls, an afterlife, and supernatural powers were laid in the Paleolithic and are still with us today. Healthcare and medicine. A young hunter cries out in pain, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle from a fall during a hunt. In our world, he would be taken to an emergency room for x-rays and surgery. But 30,000 years ago, something remarkable happens. The band's healer approaches with practiced assurance, equipped with tools and knowledge passed down through generations. What happens next would astonish many modern medical professionals. Archaeological evidence shows that Paleolithic people had sophisticated medical knowledge that defies our assumptions about primitive healthcare. Trepanation, a surgical procedure where a hole was drilled or scraped into the skull, was performed by prehistoric societies worldwide. This was not random butchery by ignorant savages. Many patients survived, as shown by healed bone growth around the surgical sites. The Paleolithic medicine cabinet was nature itself. Of 212 plant species identified at one site, about 60% were found to be both medicinal and edible. This includes willow bark, which contains the precursor to aspirin, for pain relief, specific mosses with antibiotic properties, and numerous herbs for treating everything from wounds to digestive ailments. This wasn't guesswork. It was a body of accumulated knowledge, refined over thousands of years. Broken bones tell stories of successful treatment. Archaeologists have found healed fractures that were correctly set, sometimes with signs of splints made from wood and secured with plant fiber cords. The alignment of these healed bones often rivals modern orthopedic results. These ancient bone setters understood anatomy from hands-on experience, not textbooks. The practice of eating soil-like substances, such as chalk and clay, has been observed in animals and humans for hundreds of thousands of years. What we might see as eating dirt was actually advanced medicine. Certain clays possess antimicrobial properties and can soothe digestive problems, a concept that pharmaceutical companies have only recently begun to investigate. The role of the healer was a combination of what we would now consider separate professions: physician, pharmacist, psychologist, and spiritual guide. These were not quacks but individuals with deep knowledge of human anatomy, plant medicine, and mental well-being. They understood that treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit was more effective than just addressing symptoms. The care provided to the disabled and injured reveals the compassionate core of Paleolithic society. Skeletons have been found of individuals who lived for years with disabilities that would have required constant support. A man with a withered arm who reached old age. A woman with severe arthritis who was clearly cared for by her community. These were not societies that cast aside the weak, but ones that valued every member. Paleolithic humans likely learned by observing animals self-medicating, then expanded on this knowledge through their own experimentation. When your survival hinges on staying healthy, you become a keen observer of what works. Dental care was also practiced. Evidence of toothpicks made from wood and bone, along with wear patterns indicating regular cleaning, shows a concern for oral hygiene. Some skulls even display signs of primitive dentistry, such as infected teeth that were deliberately extracted to prevent the spread of infection. Wound care was surprisingly advanced. Honey, with its antimicrobial properties, was likely used when available. Certain tree resins acted as natural bandages, protecting wounds and preventing infection. Spiderwebs may have been used to aid blood clotting, a practice still found in some traditional healing systems today. The biggest difference between Paleolithic and modern medicine was not knowledge but technology. These healers understood infection without knowing about bacteria, recognized medicinal plants, set bones, performed surgery, and offered psychological support. They did it all without X-rays, antibiotics, or anesthesia. Their success rate, as seen in healed injuries in the archaeological record, suggests they were remarkably effective despite these limitations. The Storyteller's Hour. As the darkness outside deepens, an elderly woman clears her throat by the fire, and the entire band falls silent. This is the moment they have all been anticipating. In our time, we might call it primetime entertainment, but for Paleolithic people, this was the Storyteller's Hour. The flames cast animated shadows on the cave walls, providing the perfect stage for tales that have been told for generations. Recent archaeological discoveries at Chauvet Cave in France indicate that storytelling was more than just amusement. The placement of images deep inside the cave, requiring torches and a perilous journey to reach, suggests these were sacred spaces where stories and rituals merged. Dr. Jean Klotz, who studied these ancient narrative environments, found that many cave paintings were positioned to create an illusion of movement in the flickering firelight. A bison might appear to be running across the wall as the flames danced, bringing the story to life in a way that would impress modern animators. The stories themselves had multiple functions. They were history lessons, teaching the young about fruitful hunting grounds and dangerous territories. They were science classes explaining animal behavior and seasonal changes. They were moral guides, reinforcing social cohesion and proper conduct. Imagine a grandmother detailing how the clan survived a brutal winter when she was a child, her words creating images more powerful than any photograph. The children lean in, their eyes wide, absorbing not just a story but critical survival data wrapped in a compelling narrative. Linguistic analysis suggests that complex language capable of storytelling likely emerged at least 100,000 years ago. This development coincides with the rise of symbolic thought and art. The human brain appears to be inherently wired for narrative, and these evening gatherings around the fire literally helped shape our neural architecture. When modern scientists play story recordings to subjects while monitoring their brain activity, they find that narrative activates more neural networks than any other type of communication. The storyteller's role was so vital that many societies had special positions for these memory keepers. Evidence from burial sites reveals that some individuals were interred with unique items, hinting at their status as knowledge holders. In a remarkable case from Sungir, Russia, dating to 28,000 years ago, an elderly man was buried with ivory beads arranged in patterns that may have represented stories or songs, taking his tales with him to the grave but leaving behind clues to their importance. Seasonal preparations. The old woman's fingers sketch patterns in the dirt as she describes the coming shift. 3 more sunrises, and the Great Migration will begin. Every member of the band understands their part in this ancient, well-rehearsed movement. Seasonal travel was not aimless wandering. It was a series of carefully planned relocations that followed patterns established over millennia. For Paleolithic peoples, reading the seasons was a life-or-death skill. Archaeological evidence from Pinsevent in France, dated to around 12,000 years ago, shows the complexity of these seasonal circuits. Researchers discovered the remains of autumn hunting camps where reindeer were processed, with designated zones for butchering, hide preparation, and tool repair. The layout of hearths and work areas displays incredible organization, like a prehistoric assembly line built for maximum efficiency. Preparations started weeks before the actual departure. Women gathered surplus plant foods that could be dried and transported. Seeds from summer fruits were meticulously saved, not just for sustenance, but because they knew these plants grew along their migration routes. Men crafted new spear points and mended carrying frames. Children collected fire-starting materials, learning the rhythms that dictated their lives through active participation. Modern hunter-gatherers in similar climates travel between 300 and 500 kilometers annually in their seasonal movements. For Paleolithic Europeans who followed herds and plant cycles, the distances were probably comparable. Each season presented its own set of challenges and opportunities. Spring offered bird eggs and fresh vegetation. Summer provided berries and small game. Autumn brought nuts and migrating herds, while winter demanded a reliance on stored provisions and different hunting tactics. The brilliance of these seasonal migrations becomes evident when we look at the archaeological record. Sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic show signs of repeated occupation over thousands of years. The same families returned to the same locations, generation after generation, cultivating a profound knowledge of place that modern GPS technology can barely replicate. They knew where the best flint was located, which valleys offered protection from winter gales, where medicinal plants grew, and when specific animals would appear. Climate data from ice cores and pollen samples confirm that Paleolithic peoples successfully weathered dramatic environmental shifts. During the last glacial maximum, around 20,000 years ago, when ice sheets blanketed much of northern Europe, human populations adapted their seasonal routes, moving their ranges southward while preserving their essential patterns. This flexibility, founded on deep environmental knowledge, allowed our ancestors to survive changes that drove other species to extinction. The hunters return. The first sign is a sound, a rhythmic whoop that carries across the valley. The hunters are coming back, and by the sound of it, the day was a success. The entire camp springs to life. Children dash to the edge of the settlement, women pause their work, and even the elders rise from their afternoon repose. In the Paleolithic world, a successful hunt was more than just a meal. It meant survival for the next few days, materials for tools and clothing, and a cause for celebration. As the hunting party becomes visible, the proof of their success is clear. For men are carrying a pole between them, from which a red deer is suspended. But this is more than just meat. Archaeological analyses of kill sites across Europe reveal that Paleolithic hunters utilized every part of their prey. The antlers would be fashioned into tools and weapons. The hide would be turned into clothing and shelter. The sinew would become thread. The bones would be cracked for their rich marrow and carved into needles. Even the hooves would be boiled down to make glue. The distribution of the kill followed protocols as ancient as humanity itself. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers indicate that these rules were complex and essential for maintaining social cohesion. The hunter who delivered the killing blow might get a choice cut, but every family would receive a share. Special portions were allocated to pregnant women, the elderly, and families with numerous children. This was not charity. It was an investment in the group's collective future. Evidence from sites like Abri-Petaude in France shows dedicated butchering areas where the same techniques were employed for thousands of years. Cut marks on bones reveal a standardized processing method that would impress any modern butcher. Their knowledge of anatomy was exact, with specific tools designed for different tasks. This expertise was not developed overnight but was refined over generations, with each hunter contributing to the collective wisdom. The celebration that ensued was more than simple feasting. Bone flutes dating back 40,000 years have been discovered across Europe, suggesting that music was part of these gatherings. The famous cave paintings at Lascaux might represent a form of hunting magic, with rituals conducted to ensure future success. The social bonds strengthened during these celebrations were as important as the calories consumed. Sharing food, recounting the story of the hunt, and performing rituals of gratitude all served to reinforce the connections that enabled small bands to thrive in challenging environments. Modern experiments with prehistoric hunting methods reveal just how skilled our ancestors were. Using replicas of Paleolithic weapons, researchers have shown that achieving accuracy and power required years of practice. The hunters returning to camp were not just lucky. They were masters of their craft, combining knowledge of animal behavior, weather, terrain, and weapon technology in a way that guaranteed their community's survival. The Apprentice System. Young Core sits cross-legged next to the master Toolmaker, observing every motion with rapt attention. At 12 years old, he has been chosen for this privilege, singled out from his peers for his steady hands and patient demeanor. There were no formal schools in the Paleolithic, but education was a constant and vital part of life. The Apprentice System, which would later be formalized in medieval guilds, has its origins in these ancient teaching relationships. The archaeological record preserves this learning process in what researchers call practice pieces. At sites across Europe, archaeologists discover crudely made tools alongside masterfully crafted ones, clear evidence of learners working beside experts. At Ideals in France, researchers found a knapping workshop from 13,000 years ago where they could actually trace the learning curve. Discarded fragments showed a clear progression from clumsy initial attempts to increasingly refined work. The master demonstrates the technique once more, angling the hammerstone just so, anticipating exactly where the flake will detach. This is not just a craft, it is a science. Modern analysis shows that successful stone toolmaking requires an intuitive understanding of fracture mechanics, principles that would not be formally articulated until the 20th century. Yet, Paleolithic toolmakers grasped these concepts through generations of accumulated experience. Learning extended far beyond toolmaking. Girls learned plant identification from their mothers and aunts, memorizing not only which plants were edible but also when to harvest them, how to process them to remove toxins, and which ones had medicinal uses. Boys learned to interpret animal tracks, predict weather patterns, and navigate by the stars and landscape features. This knowledge was transferred through observation, practice, and gentle guidance, creating an educational framework that produced graduates capable of thriving in environments that would challenge a modern person, even with all our technology. The Apprentice System also had important social functions. It forged bonds between generations, ensured cultural continuity, and created a pathway for innovation. When apprentices from different bands met at seasonal gatherings, they exchanged techniques, allowing new ideas to spread across vast distances. A new method for hafting a spear point developed in one valley could disseminate across a continent within a generation through these knowledge-sharing networks. Physical evidence of this teaching process is found in the form of handprints in caves. At Gargas Cave in France, researchers have found hundreds of hand stencils, many clearly made by children. These were not random acts of vandalism but possibly part of initiation rites, marking the transition from child to apprentice. The placement of these prints, often in hard-to-reach locations, suggests they held deep significance in the learning journey. The night watch. As most of the band settles down to sleep, Aaron takes his post at the edge of the camp, spear at the ready, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. The night watch was perhaps the most crucial role in Paleolithic society, yet it is one that leaves little direct archaeological trace. While others slept, the watchers stood as a shield between their families and the dangers that moved in the dark. The threats were numerous and real. Cave bears, while mainly herbivorous, could be fiercely aggressive if startled. Saber-toothed cats, cave hyenas, and wolf packs all posed significant dangers. Evidence from Paleolithic sites shows that humans were not always the dominant predators. Bones bearing both human tool marks and carnivore tooth marks tell stories of intense competition for resources and sometimes tragic encounters. The night watchers employed sophisticated tactics. They kept fires burning at strategic points around the encampment, knowing that most predators are wary of flames. They learned to interpret every sound in the night, distinguishing the harmless rustling of small nocturnal creatures from the deliberate approach of a large predator. They knew that certain hours were more dangerous than others, with the period just before dawn being particularly critical, as both guards and their wards were at their most vulnerable. Archaeological evidence suggests that these guards did more than just stand watch. At sites like Dolny Vestinus, researchers have found signs of nighttime activities, including toolmaking and hide processing. The watchers kept their hands occupied with tasks that could be done by firelight, maximizing the group's productivity while remaining vigilant. This multitasking approach meant that even security duty contributed to the band's material well-being. The psychological demands of night watching helped shape human evolution. Our ability to function on limited sleep, our superior night vision compared to other primates, and our keen sense of hearing all evolved partly in response to the need for nocturnal vigilance. The watchers likely developed techniques we still use today, from consuming caffeine-like stimulants derived from certain plants to performing physical exercises to maintain alertness. The rotation of guard duties reveals a complex social organization. Evidence from seasonal camps suggests that watch duties were allocated according to intricate rules, taking into account age, health, and family responsibilities. Young adults often took the most demanding middle-of-the-night shifts, while experienced hunters handled the critical pre-dawn hours. This system ensured that the community's safety never rested on a single individual's alertness, creating a level of redundancy that modern security experts would appreciate as best practice. Innovation and discovery. The accident is swift. Mara drops her clay-lined basket too near the fire and, expecting it to be ruined, instead finds that the clay has fired into a hard, waterproof material. This fictional scenario represents thousands of real-life discoveries that reshaped Paleolithic existence. Innovation wasn't conceived in research facilities. It grew out of daily routines, mishaps, and keen observation. The archaeological record is filled with such game-changing moments. The oldest known fired ceramics, dating back 29,000 years, come from Dolny Vestinus. These were not pots but small figurines, suggesting the technology was first used for symbolic expression before its practical utility was recognized. This pattern is common throughout prehistory, with innovations often starting in one domain before being applied to others. Consider the needle, one of humanity's most underrated inventions. The oldest dyed needles, found in Denisova Cave in Siberia, date to about 50,000 years ago. This simple tool revolutionized clothing production, enabling the creation of fitted garments that offered far better insulation against the cold. The archaeological evidence shows this technology spread rapidly, pointing to information networks that spanned continents. Innovation required more than just discovery. It required social acceptance. New methods had to prove their superiority over established ones. The archaeological record shows periods of technological stability punctuated by bursts of rapid change. During the Middle Paleolithic, tool designs remained relatively consistent for thousands of years. Then, around 50,000 years ago, the rate of innovation dramatically increased. New tool types emerged and spread quickly, suggesting shifts in how knowledge was shared and retained. The role of women in Paleolithic innovation is often underestimated but was likely substantial. Ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers reveal that women's gathering tasks frequently lead to discoveries about plant processing, medicine, and material science. The development of weaving, pottery, and food preservation techniques probably emerged from the daily activities traditionally performed by women. Perhaps most impressively, Paleolithic peoples developed the very concept of improvement. They did not simply replicate existing tools. They actively experimented with new designs. Microscopic analysis of stone tools shows a process of constant refinement, with each generation making subtle enhancements. This culture of innovation, born in the Paleolithic, laid the foundation for all future human technological progress. Planning tomorrow. As the fire dies down, the elders convene for the evening's final duty, planning for the next day. This might appear ordinary, but the capacity to think beyond the present moment marked a cognitive leap that set our ancestors apart from other animals. The archaeological proof for this planning ability stretches back hundreds of thousands of years, written in the placement of tools, the choice of campsites, and the caching of resources. At Cavemen Cave in Israel, archaeologists found evidence of planning dating back 400,000 years. Our ancestors were selecting specific types of stone for tools and storing them for later use. They maintained fires continuously for months, which required careful management of fuel. They preserved bones to extract marrow weeks after the initial hunt. These were not impulsive acts but deliberate strategies that demanded foresight and cooperation. The evening planning sessions addressed both immediate needs and long-term goals. Where would the next day's hunting party go? Which plants were ready for harvest? Who would look after the children while others were away? These decisions required an encyclopedic knowledge of the environment, weather patterns, and seasonal cycles. Modern project managers would recognize the complexity involved in coordinating a band's activities to ensure everyone was fed, safe, and productive. Evidence for this planning is found in the archaeological record in the form of caches, stored materials hidden for future use. Across Europe and Asia, researchers have discovered collections of tools, raw materials, and even food supplies that were deliberately concealed. These caches required not just foresight but also a level of trust that the materials would be left undisturbed, suggesting social agreements that went beyond immediate family. The cognitive challenges of planning profoundly shaped our ancestors' brains. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive functions and future-oriented thinking, expanded dramatically during human evolution. This was no coincidence. It was an adaptation. Those who could plan ahead survived harsh winters, anticipated animal migrations, and prepared for seasonal food shortages. Natural selection favored the planners, the worriers, and those who constantly asked, "What if?" As the elders finish their discussion and bank the fire for the night, they have secured their band's survival for another day. But more than that, they have taken part in a ritual as old as humanity itself, using the past to navigate the present and prepare for the future. This capacity for temporal thought, developed around Paleolithic campfires, remains one of humanity's most defining traits. The eternal cycle. Dawn breaks once more, and the Paleolithic day cycle begins anew. The same rhythms that structured life 30,000 years ago persist. Yet, every day brings small changes. This is the paradox of Paleolithic existence, a life of constant routine punctuated by continuous adaptation. As we have explored, our ancestors' days were not filled with primitive hardship, but with sophisticated activities that laid the foundation for all subsequent human progress. The image of the caveman as a brutish, simple-minded being vanishes when we examine the archaeological facts. These were people who created art that still has the power to move us, develop technologies that we still employ in principle, and establish social structures that we still follow. They were musicians and storytellers, meticulous planners and daring innovators, loving parents and devoted friends. Their days were as rich and complex as our own, simply organized around different imperatives. What impresses modern researchers most is the sustainability of the Paleolithic way of life. For over 2 million years, our ancestors existed in a relative equilibrium with their environment. They took what they required, but seldom more. Their ecological footprint was negligible. Their social groups were largely egalitarian, and their lifestyle fostered both physical and mental resilience. Studies of modern hunter-gatherers show lower incidences of depression, anxiety, and chronic diseases compared to industrialized societies. The skills honed during the Paleolithic continue to shape us. Our fondness for stories around a fire echoes their evening gatherings. Our children learn through observation and hands-on practice, just as Paleolithic apprentices did. We still instinctively form small, tightly knit social circles, even while living in cities of millions. We still feel the thrill of the hunt, whether for a bargain or a business opportunity. The patterns forged over hundreds of thousands of years do not simply vanish in a few millennia of civilization. As our Paleolithic ancestors began each new day, they were guided by the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. They understood that survival depended on cooperation, that knowledge had to be preserved and shared, and that innovation needed to be balanced with tradition. These lessons, learned around ancient fires and passed down through the ages, remain profoundly relevant as we confront our own modern challenges. The Paleolithic day ends as it began, with the simple acts of survival elevated into the intricate dance of human culture. In understanding how our ancestors spent their time, we come to better understand ourselves. We are neither fallen angels who have lost a primitive paradise nor ascended apes who have conquered our animal instincts. We are the inheritors of a magnificent legacy, shaped by millions of days of careful observation, patient instruction, and persistent innovation. The next time you plan your day, teach a skill to a child, or gather with friends for a meal, remember that you are partaking in traditions as ancient as humanity itself. The Paleolithic day never truly ended. It just changed its attire.